right. I will connect back if we get disconnected, I promise.
All right, sounds good. All right, we're good. We're on. All right, guys, this is another session of the I don't have a name for this program yet. I'm trying to get as many guys on here as possible that have an interesting story of their journey, where they had something with their health or their weight or something in their life that they didn't like in the past, and they figured out how to make improvements. And we want to hear what those things were, how they did it, what their mindset was, what the challenges were, all those things. So that being said, Brett, how are you?
I'm very well, Bronson. Thanks so much for this opportunity.
Absolutely, man. I've seen you around in the community, the low carb, carnivore, keto, health space, food is real medicine space for a while now. And just tell me a little bit about who you are. What are you doing now? Like, where are you now in life?
I'm a 59-year-old musician. I also coach the Carnivore way of eating through meatrx.com, Dr. Sean Baker's platform. And I do manual labor at a print shop.
Okay.
In addition to also being a songwriter and a studio producer, and I got my hands in lots of different pies now.
Yeah,
and,
wow, okay, awesome.
It's really, really a joy to be able to do the things that I love, and helping others learn about the carnivore way of eating has become a new vocation.
Right. Now, you're 59. When do you turn 60?
I turned 60 in March.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you're closer to 60 than I am to 50. Man. I got about a year and a half to go. So you posted something recently. After we talked and set this video up, I saw you post on your Facebook page that you can't imagine years ago that someone would be contacting you to talk about health and fitness.
That's exactly right. Because this time 5 years ago, I had just been a few months starting to get my act back together a little bit, but I still weighed about 270 and was trying to titrate off of numerous psych meds. And I was very socially unacceptable, to say the least, at the time, because I was still suffering from chronic depression, anxiety, and insomnia symptoms.
Wow. Okay. And how long did you deal with that?
For over 40 years.
Wow. Okay.
Looking back with clear eyes and hindsight, I can see that I started experiencing symptoms around the age of 15. That's when sleep disruptions started. Mm-hmm. And sleep disruptions, in my experience, are like the body's red flag that something's not right.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So you were dealing with that about 5 years ago. Sorry, I interrupted you.
That's okay. That's all right. 5 years ago, I was in a horrible place. In January of 2015, I weighed 289 pounds. I was on multiple psych meds for, as I said, depression, anxiety, and insomnia. Mm-hmm. My psychiatrist in January of 2015 was seriously recommending that I consider electroshock therapy and or a long-term hospitalization.
Wow.
I didn't just have depression. I had major depression with psychotic features. And the psychotic features started having a party. Hmm. It was very bleak. And thousands of years ago, when I had hair and a much better waistline, I worked in the psych field. Okay. And I was very cognizant of the fact that chronic mental illness and taking psych meds will shorten a person's life up to a third or more.
Wow. See, I hadn't heard that. Wow.
And I knew I very much in January of 2015, I didn't think I'd live out the year, to be honest.
Okay.
But a dear friend of mine, I was also a barely functioning songwriter creator at the time. And I had this lady who just an incredible singer. And I'd written a bunch of blues material that I couldn't do the vocals for. And she answered the Craigslist ad, and I'm so thankful she did, because she's watching me deteriorate. And she says, well, have you ever considered medical marijuana before? Now, as a musician, it was always around, but it wasn't my thing. I had a bad experience with it when I was young, and you know, beer was legal. What do I need that nonsense for?
Yeah.
So it just, you know, I was the guy at rehearsals or before the gig, in between breaks at gigs, you know, when one would go, a joint would go around, I'm passing on. It's just not my thing. But I did some research because I was aware of the medical marijuana programs in different states that had popped up. And there was some anecdotal evidence that people were getting some symptom relief.
Right.
And I talked it over with my wife, and she's like, well, at this point, what do we have to lose?
Yeah.
I mean, because I took meds as prescribed for over 23 years, and all I did was get worse, sicker, and fatter. So we secured 4 grams of flour. My wife found a can of butter recipe on the internet, and she made these little, they weren't carnivore cookies by any means, but they were keto. They were about the size of a quarter.
Yeah.
And Bronson, I was scared of these things because of the bad experience I mentioned when I was young, and I broke one in half. And 10 minutes after I ate it, I wasn't high. I just felt like 1,000 suns had lifted off my shoulders.
Wow.
I didn't feel like crap for the first time in many, many years. And then 45 minutes into that, after that, the high kicked in, and I learned that cannabis successfully treated all of my symptoms, unlike the medications I had been prescribed and taking as prescribed.
Right.
The anxiety, you know, it just kind of melted away, and I was an angry, depressed person.
Okay.
I had the scowling troll
you were mean. You were the mean guy.
I was not a nice person. I've told people, I'll say it till my last breath, if anybody's deserved their place in heaven, it's my wife, because she put up with me when I was very hard to live with. Very hard to live with. But cannabis treated all the symptoms so well and so much. Well, 10 days into it, after half a cookie a day.
Yeah.
I'm 10 days into that, and I'm sitting on my bed putting my shoes on. And Bronson, for the first time in many years, I've become aware of the fact my belly's in the way.
Okay. So this is leading to that point. I was going to ask you, like, where did you get to the point that, hey, I need to make a change on the fitness and nutrition side of things? So you got,
well, we're getting
cannabis,
there right now.
The cannabis got you clear-headed.
Well, it got me better. It got me better, but I was still unemployable, socially inappropriate, the whole 9 yards.
Okay.
But I was able, see, with me, due to the psychotic features portion of my diagnosis, it became very difficult for me to accurately perceive my environment.
Gotcha.
Because the illness would nudge it, twist it, filter it, and never in my favor. You know, my wife would say to me, oh, it's going to be a beautiful day. But what I heard through my illness was, oh, yeah, it's going to be another beautiful day. Sure. I love my wife. That's what I heard. So my instinctive response, well, honey, what's wrong? And of course, she just said, hey, it looks like it's going to be a beautiful day, in all sincerity. Yeah. And so she's looking at me like, did you not just, how did you get that out of what I just told you?
Right.
Communication became horribly difficult. And it was just another thing to grind on you every day, all day long.
And that's between you and her, not to mention yourself.
Exactly. Well, me and anybody, because somebody would say something to me and I did not hear it accurately.
Right.
Or the intention of what was said would be twisted against me or against the person who said it. So I put my shoes on, my belly's in the way. I have, and I'm like, that's a scary moment. That was a very scary moment for me, because I was like, that's not a good sign, Brett. And I looked in the mirror and saw myself accurately for the first time in years.
Yeah.
And I looked like a stroke or a heart attack, just imminently on the verge of taking place. I had that pallid gray look. It was just horrible. And I told my wife, I had experience with the Atkins diet a few years earlier, and I'd lost some weight, then my mood got better, but nobody suggested or hinted that my mood got better because of the dietary change. But I knew when I looked in the mirror that day that if I didn't start right then, I might not live out the year. And so started low carb as I understood it then. We were very inept at it. We were draining the fat off the meat instead of consuming it. Or I might have gotten better a lot sooner. But with cannabis and low carb, high fat, at the end of 2015, I was off all the antipsychotic, antidepressants. By the end of 2016, I was off the anti-anxiety medications. I was on Ativan for 8.5 years. It was not fun to come off of. And then at the end of 2017, I was off the insomnia meds. And I've not taken any pharmaceutical medication since November of 2020, it was 17, yes.
Wow.
None.
So 3 years off. And that's just by changing your nutrition.
That was just changing the nutrition and using cannabis to treat the symptoms.
Yeah.
And in that 3 years, I walked off 94 pounds.
Wow, man. That is incredible.
I was very committed, but I was still suffering mental illness. I wasn't cured. I wasn't fixed. If I didn't use cannabis daily, after about 3 or 4 days, then I would start to become unhinged again. And then it would take maybe 3 to 6 weeks for me to get back to what I called at that time, to get my calm back.
Sure. Okay.
Fast forward to May of 2018, the same lady that recommended that I look into medical marijuana messages me one day and says, "Hey, you got to watch every video by this guy named Dr. Jordan Peterson."
Yeah.
And okay. And I started watching Jordan Peterson videos and became an instant fan because I admire his advocacy for personal responsibility and honesty. And he just said a lot of things that I had been feeling for many years but couldn't articulate. And so that became part of my deal. Was 420 time I'd have a cookie and sit down in front of the TV and look for Jordan Peterson videos. And I came across this 30-minute cutout for when he was on Joe Rogan. You know which cutout I'm talking about, I bet.
Yep.
Where he describes how his daughter, Michaela, through her experimenting, figured out that how to eliminate her chronic horrible depression and severe arthritis by eating beef, salt, and water. And then he articulated in ways I could comprehend how he was suffering from severe mental illness and had immensely improved his situation by eating beef, salt, and water. Now, if this is anybody but Jordan Peterson telling me this, I'm flipping the channel and moving on. But here's somebody I believe has incredible integrity telling me I don't have to suffer anymore.
Right.
And I was so amazed by what and I begged my wife as soon as she got on, you got to watch this with me. I need to know that I'm really hearing what I think I'm hearing. Oh yeah, you're hearing it. He really means it. And so I started searching. My next discovery was none other than Dr. Sean Baker on Joe Rogan.
Yep.
And Bronson, I must have watched the dietary portion of that discussion 50 times because now I'm thinking, this is too good to be true. Why didn't somebody ever hint to me in all these years and all these doctors and all these damn pills that I took for so many years? Why didn't somebody bother to say, hey, maybe if you cut back on your sugar and carbs, you would feel better?
Yeah.
Nobody did.
Well, and it's sad. Like I hear that story every single day, people that have issues and they're like, why didn't somebody in medicine tell me? And it's unfortunate that it's partially because many of them don't know.
Well, they weren't trained.
Because they weren't trained, but because they have MD behind their name, we have this thing in society where if you have MD, you must know everything about everything. And that's that's about as far from the truth as you can possibly get for many, many reasons, not just for the fact that they don't in general, but for the fact that many people, once they get the MD behind their names, they stop learning. They get the MD, I'm there, I got what I need, I'm just going to go out and do what I've been told, what I've been taught, and they don't take the time to expand their knowledge. That's why I really appreciate all the doctors we have in this space, the keto carnivore space, because they're doctors that have gone to get the extra knowledge and gone to learn what's actually going to work for my people and my patients, and not just do what the book says to do because that's what the book says to do it. The clinicians are the real scientists, because they're the ones applying new information to see what works. Right.
You're
and
exactly right.
I absolutely love that, which makes us, in a way, we're scientists, right? But because we don't have MD behind our name, we don't know what we're talking about. Even though we're leaving people and we coach people and we get people healthy, we help people get themselves healthy. You know, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
I agree. And the further I get into my wellness, the more I become astounded at the lack of curiosity by the medical community in people like me, in cases like mine. I'm just one of millions of people who've experienced this. So it's not like I'm reinvented the wheel or anything here.
Absolutely.
But after seeing Dr. Baker, you know, again, here you've got this gentleman, Air Force combat surgeon. Now, you know, Bronson, they just don't let anybody do that.
Right.
You've got to be an extraordinarily well put together human being to even be considered for such a job. So again, you have a human being with incredible, impeccable integrity telling me this is possible, and there were no flaws in his logic. That's why I watched it 50 times. I kept thinking, there's got to be something here that's not on the up and up.
It's been almost 3 years for me, Brett. I haven't found it yet.
I haven't either. I don't think it exists.
Every question that I have ever had about nutrition and fitness, or how nutrition affects fitness, about how nutrition affects your body, about why this vitamin, why that, like everything I have ever questioned has been answered following this way of eating. And the more questions I have and the more things that pop up that I don't know or go research, it's right there. It's like, well, that makes sense. It just makes sense. Everything falls in place. And then when you look at the big picture, it's like, oh, that's where quality of life comes from.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because it's just, everything just falls in place. And that's the picture of what I want my life to be. Okay, there we go.
And after Dr. Baker, I found this talk by Amber O'Hearn, Keto Fest 2017. And she explained in a way, this guitar player, remember, I'm not a nutrition somebody. I'm not some expert on anything.
Mm-hmm.
She explained in a way I could understand how, as a species, we literally came down out of the trees, grew this bone structure that we have, these energy demanding brains, by eating meat.
Yeah.
And, you know, I didn't even know I had to seek them, let alone, I mean, she explained things that I never knew about human physiology. And at the end of it, I'm looking at my wife going, I have to do this. I can't not try this. And today is my 856th day of doing so, and I've had exactly 0 cheat days.
Wow.
10 days into the experience, I woke up without joint pain for the first time as an adult. Now, I'd never been diagnosed as arthritic, but I was 57 years old. I played music in bars for a living for 20-some years. You climbing up on tables and to play guitar solos, and sometimes the table becomes a little non-compliant, and then you protect the instrument and sacrifice your body, and you keep on performing. And if you walk around like a question mark for the next 3 days, hey, that's rock and roll. Get over it. I was ambulatory, but I had a lot of aches and pains. But I just thought, that's what you get for living this long.
Right.
You know, that's normal.
Which is not, it's not.
No, it's not. Because I woke up without any joint pain at 57, and I was taking early morning walks then, and I'm skipping down the sidewalk like a little boy, giggling to myself because it doesn't hurt.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm just picturing Brett. I'm just picturing you skipping down the sidewalk.
Oh, I'm happy now. You know, if it'd been the middle of the day when people could see me, I probably wouldn't have done that. But you know, 5:36 in the morning when it's still dark outside, you take chances. But then on the 24th day, and I get emotional about this because it's so wonderful. I'm walking along, and I've been real careful. You know, don't placebo yourself into something that's not real.
Yep.
But it's like somebody just flicked the switch, and all that rage and all that anger and all that frustration and all that incredibly dark sadness and shadowy nonsense that was constantly preventing me from living the life I wanted to live, from being the person I wanted to be. It all just went away. It just went away. And it was replaced by this waterfall of joy that has not left me, not for one moment on any day since.
That's awesome.
And that's why I do these. It's not because going down memory lane is a good time, because it's really not. But people need to know you're not broken. You're not a genetic mistake. Your mom and dad didn't make an accident.
Mm-hmm.
You were taught to consume things as food that aren't meant for human consumption, that cause inflammation in the body and in the brain. And when you remove that from your diet, as you rightly said, we remove the inflammation. Our natural state, if our environment permits it, is one of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy every day. It doesn't take any effort. I'm not, oh, geez, I really need to work on my happiness today. No. No, it's
right.
not. It's nor. I wake up smiling, thrilled to death every morning. You know, and I've had, you know, life still happens. It doesn't make you bulletproof. My father passed away earlier this year in stage renal disease after 20 plus years of type 2 diabetes that no one told him was reversible. And I learned about all this too late to help him.
Yeah.
He was already in the grips of dementia by the time I learned what I learned. And I was there helping my mom take care of him through hospice. And that was a horrible thing to watch your dad die. But it was just a sad thing. It wasn't depression.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My mood was not wrecked. I was not thinking horrible end of the world thoughts because of this situation that my father was in. It was dying's part of life. It was his time. Unfortunately, he chose inadvertently a miserable way to do it. But depression has not touched me since.
That's incredible, man. That's I know so many people that have mental health issues, and one, they're afraid to talk about it. We don't talk about mental health enough. I don't know why. I don't know why we don't. There's something in society, we just don't do it enough. And I think it's a huge part of the problems that people have in their lives is mental. They don't get the help that they need, whether it be counseling, whether it just be community, whether it just be having a friend to talk to, some outlet, something to help with that. And then the stigma of being mentally ill, right? I think that in and of itself affects people, you know? So, good.
That's the biggest reason why people don't like to talk about it. It's the social stigma that's attached to it. Because I've experienced this from both sides of the aisle. You know, I worked in the mental health field in my 20s until I sabotaged myself out of it with my crazy behavior.
Right.
And once you've suffered mental illness, you know, people treat you different. People look at you different. People, you know, you get that, oh, you might say something and I'm trying to communicate, but I'm not making any sense. But I'm not getting that understanding pat on the back. I'm getting that, ooh, I'm going to step back away from you because you're scaring me kind of thing.
Gotcha. Yeah. Which it's interesting. I feel maybe it's because I'm in this space now more than I've ever been. I feel anecdotally for myself, like I'm having more conversations about this now over the past year and a half than I ever had in my entire life. You know, and it's probably just my own circle of influence, my own sphere of the people that I'm talking to, and what I'm doing, helping people get through issues. So I'm hearing more of people's issues. I am amazed at how prevalent mental health issues are. And I'm not going to say disorders or illness because there's so many different levels and layers and things that I can say, hey, you have some mental health stuff we can work on. That doesn't need a diagnosis per se. Just, hey, you're dealing with some stress. Let's take it. There's better ways to deal with it than what you're doing. So we've all got different, I think everyone's got different levels. I don't know anybody if you can even say there's any such thing as 100% mental health. I think it's a consistent thing, just like nutrition and fitness, right? There's always things that you're working on. And unfortunately, the mental health is the one thing that people kind of push off, and we focus on other things instead. So,
well, you know, plus you can be sick for years and years and not know that you're sick.
Right.
You know, I was doing crazy things, but at no time was anybody saying, hey, you know, your behavior's really out there on the ledge now. You know, you need to maybe, I didn't have anybody, any influences suggesting that my behavior was even remotely inappropriate. And, you know, family members, they'd shake their head a lot, but nobody ever said anything.
Okay. Wow.
So I thought this was all normal. And I'm sure that I am not the only person who felt like that when they're mentally ill. Because if you don't know you're sick, where's your point of reference?
Right. So let's get real back to you. The cannabis helped. You changed your nutrition, and you saw after let's say about a month that you had some mental improvements, and you're like, wow, there's a whole new world out there for me. What happened on the physical side of things? How long did you start before you started seeing things happen physically?
Well, just let me add real quickly. I lost the depression on the 24th day. It took 5 months to lose the anxiety.
Okay.
And then the insomnia took about 10 months. It was a gradual decline to where it just got better till it was gone over a 10-month period.
Okay.
Now, fitness-wise, okay, I lost 94 pounds low carb. And then on Carnivore, I lost 22 more. So I lost a total of 116 pounds. October of 2018, I weighed 173, which is my lowest weight as an adult since I graduated from high school. But I was as big around as this pin. I had no musculature to speak of. I knew I was extremely weak because as I gained weight and became more sick, I'd spend 10 or 14 hours a day in the computer chair trying to create music, and usually only frustrating myself and making everyone around me miserable. But I was extraordinarily inactive. And so, you know, I had no musculature to speak of, very atrophied musculature, what I did have. And I recognized I'm going to have to do things, but I've got to be very careful or I'm going to hurt myself and make things really bad really fast.
Right.
And so February of 2019, I started working out in the gym. There's a Planet Fitness within walking distance of where we live.
Okay.
And I was so weak, I was using an empty bar for curls, and it was almost too heavy. That's where I started from.
Okay.
And, you know, every other day, 3 days a week, I stuck with that religiously until I got called away in March of this year to help take care of my father, as I mentioned. And then the COVID thing happened right at the same time when they shut the gyms down. So after I come back 3 weeks later, after helping my dad pass from this life to the next, no gym. That was very frustrating. I'm still lifting a little in the house, but I'm recognizing I'm not making anywhere near the progress I was. But then Florida opened up in late May, early June, and there was a new gym a little further away, but they had a kettlebell room.
Okay. Yep.
And so I had been seeing Dr. Baker swing a kettlebell once in a while. His is 174 pounds. My kettlebells that I was swinging were nowhere near that. But it just looked, it was interesting to me. And it wasn't, I never liked conventional weights. I never felt comfortable. I just never was comfortable. I was, and I had to have that day, that rest day in between workout days because I hurt all over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, with the kettlebells, I found I can work out every day. My recovery time was way faster with the kettlebell.
How did you figure out what to do? Because kettlebells are it's easy. Did you follow a program or find a book or find some videos?
I found some videos and I listened to Dr. Baker had some tips. And it just so happens that they're in the MeatRx community. One of our coaches lives in the UK and he's been a kettlebell instructor for a number of years and he had a bunch of videos. So I didn't go in and try to figure it out blind. I went in with knowledge and, it took me a while. I was conscious of the fact I needed to get my form right before I started focusing on increasing weight and things like that. But over a 4-month period of time, I made some really good gains.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Kettlebells can do a lot of good.
But they were slow in coming. And at MeatRx, there was this gentleman, Dr. Jaquish is his name. And he created this device called the X3 bar. And he spoke to the MeatRx community one day. Several times a week, Dr. Baker will have what he calls a VIP guest, usually somebody, a medical professional, or something related to fitness, eating, diet, etc. And this gentleman brought his device on, and I'm listening to his logic. Basically, with the movements, you're not locking down joints and muscles. And I can't describe the science again because I'm still just really a guitar player. But essentially what it does is it activates the muscle creation process.
Okay.
It takes just 10 minutes a day. And it's very expensive. The thing costs like $500. I did not buy one. Somebody gifted me one.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much out of the kindness of their heart. And I hope that they're getting that goodness back in many times over. Because that's where this body is really starting to become what I was hoping if I could build it into.
Good.
Because I want the washboard stomach again. I'm not trying to become the Hulk. I'm not interested in, I just want to be as strong as I can make myself because I learned strength contributes directly to longevity.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And when I learned that,
muscle is the organ of life.
When I learned that, then my commitment to becoming as strong as possible is just as solid as my commitment to eating meat and drinking water. There's no variance. I must stay on task with exercise so that when I'm in my 70s and 80s, if I'm blessed to live that long, I'm not existing, I'm living. I'm active and functional.
Absolutely. And because that's exactly why we do it, right? We're not doing it just because we want to look good. That's a side benefit. That comes after. We're doing it so that we can enjoy life as long as possible. I don't want to be 60, 70, 80 years old living in a wheelchair in a hospice. I've seen my grandparents go through that. I've seen, I've seen the deterioration and the assumption, which is that circular logic, not even circular logic, it's that reinforcement of the mindset, right? We have a mindset in society that you're going to get weak when you get old. So people get weak when they get old, right?
That's exactly correct. And I have seen people, they retire, they were active, they were full of life. And then you see them 6 months after they retire and they've been sitting on their rear end looking at a television, and they barely resemble the person you remember. Their mood's not as good. They're kind of lifeless. It's just an existence.
Right.
Well, I did that already. 40 plus years of mental illness. That wasn't living. That was barely surviving. Now, I have the libido of a 20-year-old man now at 59.
See, that's
and
something.
If you doubt me, you could check with my 61-year-old carnivore wife, who's a month behind me in Carnivore. Hers is where it was when she was 20, and it's a bloody happy home now. I mean, we have a great time together.
So that's something else that we don't talk a lot about as guys, right? When we get older, there are things, testosterone goes down, libido goes down. And we, again, society, the money-making thing, just take a pill, right? There's a pill for that. Now, there's a pill for everything now, right? So just take a pill and you'll be fine. I've experienced it, right? It's not something that I talk about a lot, but I've experienced the same thing. I've had issues with my libido and performance. And at first I thought it was just take a pill because that's what my doctor told me. What I realized is when I went all meat, my testosterone went up. The craziest thing that's happened to me with all of that is when I stopped drinking coffee, that's when things made the change. Something about the whatever it is in coffee. I was reading something that Dr. Jamie Seaman had put out about coffee and its effect on estrogen and a bunch of other things and how it affects women's hormones. And I sent her a message. I said, hey, what does this do for guys? And she said, why don't you try not doing it for a while and you tell me what it does for guys? And I was like,
good answer.
Okay. So I stopped for about a month. It's like, oh, I guess I'm not drinking coffee anymore. It's amazing.
It really, where I gained all the weight, that was causing problems in that area. Plus mental illness is, it was a sad situation. And it was one of the few things in life that I could still, that pleasurable moment was one of the few lights that I still had when I was so sick. And to be where I am now and where we are now, I mean, what this has done for our marriage is not just from an intimacy standpoint, but our level of communication. We're not just on the same page. We're like in the same paragraph now.
That's awesome.
And it's just, I tell people it's improved every aspect of my life immensely, and every day continues to be better than the day before. And it's not taking a lot of effort. I don't have to work at it. I just have, I only eat the meat I crave. So what am I craving today? Well, it's easy. I cook it, I eat it, and life goes on. I don't think about food again.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because there's a lot of people that need different levels of, let's just say, engagement in their nutrition. How do you manage your nutrition? Some people just mentally, they can't wrap their head around just eat when hungry. They have to have numbers. They have to have tracking. They have to do this kind of stuff for it to make sense to them. You're the opposite. You just kind of eat when you're hungry, throw however much food looks good at that time. If you need more, you go get more. Like, you're intuitive, like pretty much 100%, right?
Yeah. What I learned from zeroing in on health, they only had like 4 directions. And I coach this. This is the foundation for every meal I have every day. Only eat when you're hungry.
Yep.
Number 2, when you're hungry, only eat meat until you're not another bite full. Total satiation. 3, only eat the meat you crave and can afford. Don't eat something just because Dr. Baker's eating it or Brett's eating it or Bronson's eating it. Eat it because
Absolutely.
that's what your body tells you you need. You crave.
I get that question all the time. What should I eat? I'm like, it doesn't. Whatever you can afford. Get whatever.
Exactly.
If you can only afford the cheapest ground beef in a tube, that's better than pretty much anything else you're gonna get.
Exactly.
In the box, right?
That's exactly right. And the fourth direction is, under no circumstance do we ever put a sweet taste into our mouth. Okay, these people who gave me these directions, they've been living this way for 10 years. And one of the first things I noticed, there's a lady named Kelly Hogan. You ought to have her on. Oh, she's got a great story. It would be great for this.
She's like 20 plus years, right?
No, she's been doing it for 11 years now.
Okay. Who is that?
20 plus years, Joe Anderson and Charlene Anderson.
The Andersons, that's what I'm thinking of. Okay, 20 years.
Yeah, they've been doing it for over 20 years. But she looks so incredibly healthy. She looks like a caricature of a human. She looks so healthy. Mm-hmm. And I dubbed it the Carnivore Glow because that was the only thing that came to my mind. But I found that people who've been living this way a number of years, they all have it.
Yeah.
And it's all because their skin is no longer dealing with toxins. It's incredible. I had a point to all that before I went into it. As happens sometimes, you go into the rabbit hole and the reason kind of went that way.
You get excited and lost.
Yeah. But the thing is, they radiate health. We radiate healthiness. Mm-hmm. People can't ignore that, which is a plus.
They can't ignore it. At the same time, it's really hard for them to accept it.
Very much so.
Because they don't understand it. And that's okay. And that's where I think that's a message we want to get across to people that are going through this transition themselves, is you don't, as hard as it is sometimes, you don't need to put it in everyone's face because they already see it. It's hard. I know for me, I have to almost physically restrain myself from having conversations with people sometimes, because I see someone doing something, or someone will ask a question, I'll hear a conversation next to me or whatever. And it's just so hard to just let that happen and not interject or not be part of it and not put my 2 cents in. Because you have that excitement about, I know something that's worked for me, maybe it will help you, and you want to share that. And you can't, if people aren't ready for it, if they're not asking you directly, it's usually best to just keep your mouth shut.
That is very true. And I'm very careful not to be proselytizing. Yeah. Now, I wear a lot of eat meat, drink water shirts every day that my wife,
yes, you do.
That my wife designed and printed, because I think it's important to put that message out there to let people know, because I never, maybe if I'd seen somebody 15 years ago wearing a shirt like that, I might have been curious and investigated, and maybe could have avoided 15 years worth of misery that not just I suffered, but that everybody that loved me suffered from. Because of. But I'm like you, it's hard to see people. I recognize the signs of inflammation now, the puffiness, the pockets of fat in the extremities, and the great fatigue and sleep disruption that's plain as day on the people's faces. And you don't have to suffer like that anymore. And I just, but I wait until they open the door.
There has to be a realization, and this is the one thing that I'm finding across the board with everybody I've talked to so far, and just in general, people when I talked to over the past couple of years, is there has to be an awakening within the individual so they can see themselves for what they really are. It took a visual, a picture that my daughter took of me, for me to look at that picture and go, whoa, what the heck, right? It took you getting that clear-minded enough to see and notice what your body was doing as you tied your shoes, to go, wait a second, where did this come from? What's going on? Hey, this isn't this isn't me. This isn't what I'm supposed to be. For you to start making that change. And I think it's a lot of people don't realize how poorly they're living. And it's something has to happen for them to open up their eyes and see their lives for what it really is, for them to go, whoa, what is going on here? This is not where I expected to be at this point in my life. Well, I need to change something. So if we can give information, if we can give information and put little seeds and little prickly things out there that stick in people's minds and hopefully grow into that realization, that's kind of what we do. And that's what the guys are watching these videos. So people watching these videos, we want them to get that information. Hopefully it plants seeds in them to say, here's some things that I realize about my life, or I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because I want to set an example for the people in my life, right? I've made changes in my life. I want people watching this to make changes in their lives so that they can not only affect themselves, but like you said, their spouse and everyone that loves them can be positively affected as well. Because we are more than just ourselves. We are us and the people around us that we affect and that we are interacting with. And if we're not the best, then we're not doing anything to help anybody else.
So true. So true. And, my wife, she was one of those people, if I don't eat pasta, I'll die. She had pasta 5-6 days a week. Now, I didn't like that even before Carnivore. In fact, when she and I first got married, she would make pasta for her and the kids, and I would eat in the other room because I couldn't even stand the smell of it.
Really?
Oh yeah, I hated spaghetti. I didn't like noodles. I never cared for any of that. And everybody else in my family loved it. So I was like the oddball out on that, but come to find out I had good reason for not liking that because it was bad for me. But she watched what was happening to me. And, my wife's a couple years older than me, but she'd always looked younger. Mm-hmm. Well, as my weight started coming off, and then when I went carnivore and my skin started to clear up and heal, she's like, not only is he losing weight, but his skin's clearing up and he's starting to look younger than me. And she also had arthritis in her shoulders and in her hands, osteo. Mm-hmm. So she was curious enough about the appearance change. And then, of course, the healing, she wasn't sure it would happen to her or not.
Right.
Maybe it just worked for mental illness. I'm like, no, honey, Michaela Peterson, arthritis. It'll work for you too.
Mark Stroh, there's a ton of people out there that have had severe arthritis.
And 2 months, it was gone.
That's awesome.
Now, she still has a little bit of discomfort in her hands, but that's due, she's a screen printer. So a lot of repetitive movements and things. Right. And once she retires from that, then she's not worried. She's confident that all of that will just vanish completely. But she's undergone this amazing physical transformation in addition to the libido thing and our quality of life that you mentioned early on. It's just off the charts.
So speaking of that, what are you doing now? What's different in your life now? Outside of, we talked about the mental stuff, like just your day-to-day life. How is that different now that you have changed your nutrition, you started doing things for fitness, your outlook has changed because of these positive impacts? What is different when you wake up in the morning and how you go about your day than it was 3 years ago?
Well, number one, I wake up smiling.
Yeah.
I wake up smiling. I'm in a good mood. I'm glad to be up. I know I've got a day of things that I want to accomplish. It's none of this waking up and, okay, I'm just going to try to survive the day kind of nonsense. I mean, I've got goals. I've got plans. I've got things to do. Mm-hmm. I'm a musician. Music is very important to me. I've recently gotten my muse back, or I grew a new muse. It's probably more accurate. It was interesting when I lost my depression symptoms, my muse that I'd had for all those years, that need to make music, that music was everything. And if I couldn't make music, that would be the end of me. That was my thinking for many, many years. But that all went away. And so I'm like, well, geez, now I've got this room full of music gear and equipment and no desire to touch it. Which was a little disconcerting. But then about 6 months ago, it came, the need to make music came back, but it's a different thing. It's not an unhealthy pursuit anymore that it had become before.
Is your music
I'm making my quality of music's much better, not to mention the quality of my productions, because when I was sick, you couldn't teach me anything. Learning was very hard because I already knew everything.
Sure.
All you had to do was ask me, and I could prove to you why your suggestion was, nah, I'm sorry, that's just not valid. And my wife would listen to my music, and she's like, all that, if you need to do something to it. I don't know what to do, what to tell you, but something's not right. And then I would have people who knew what it needed to be done. Professionals explain things to me. Oh, you're nuts. That's not right. Well, as a result, the quality of the productions suffered. I put out albums that should never have been released.
Yeah.
Things like that. And so, like I said, I had a long history of sabotaging myself. Well, after I got better and my muse came back, I dove into studying the art of mixing, the art of recording. And geez, when you know what you're doing, things start sounding like a whole lot better.
A whole lot different, right? Yeah.
It sounds like music now. And, I still like the minor key stuff, but I'm not writing dirges. It's not woe is Brett.
Right.
Why is my life so miserable? There's none of that nonsense anymore.
Awesome.
I'm working on 2 albums right now. One with the lady I mentioned earlier, because she and I've got a project called Dark Hearts Blues. And then I've got my own solo stuff under the Stickman Bleeding moniker, which I've had for many, many years.
Okay.
And life is just spectacularly positive because I've got things I want to accomplish. The working out, I've got this routine down, and I can adjust for the weather in Florida. Like right now, we're having it's cool mornings. So I don't get to exercise at 6 a.m. anymore. I have to wait until 9:30. Okay, right. That's easy. So I just move things around to accommodate the music because the workout must happen. It's non-negotiable.
Right. Yep.
It's going to take place.
It has to be. It has to be non-negotiable. All of these things that you're making a change have to be non-negotiable. You're making the change, reaching that reaching that point of enjoying your life has to be the most important thing to you. Because if anything else isn't, then you're going to get sidetracked. You're going to get defeated. You're going to reach a challenge that's bigger than your goal. You're going to reach a challenge that's bigger than your dream, and then you're going to stop. And you have to constantly feed that dream, feed that reason for pushing forward.
And maintaining my happiness is just a function of eating. So there's no taste, there's no texture, there's no flavor, Bronson, worth me putting my sanity at risk.
Yeah. And it's crazy when you put it that way, because I've never even thought about it in that context. We're talking about all of these aspects of life: relationships, interaction with other people, mental health, physical health, quality of life, being active, being able to participate in activities, all of these things. And it's all about, what do I put in my mouth? All of those things you can bring back to, what am I putting in my mouth? Because the food you put into your mouth is what nourishes your body, which is what allows you to participate and do the things that you want to do.
Yeah, 100% in agreement there, my friend. And it's, people, oh, that's so simplistic. You really don't know what you're talking about. Well, I only talk about my experience.
Yeah.
I don't recite studies, because then I sound like a guitar player reciting studies he doesn't understand, and I'm not going to do that to people. My experience is something that cannot be argued away. I've got the receipts from all the meds I took. I kept all that nonsense. I've got, lab work that shows, well, it's in this mess of paper somewhere. I had some lab work done a year ago. My 498th day of meat and water, I had blood drawn. My triglycerides were 63. In 2016, they were over 300.
Wow, that's crazy.
My cholesterol, or my HDL to triglyceride ratio, is 2.5. 2.5.
Wow.
That's like the lipids for a 25-year-old man, not 59-year-old guy.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
A1C was normal. I never had an A1C test prior to that, but in 2016, my blood sugar was over 200, and the doctor was telling me I was pre-diabetic, and he also wanted to put me on the statin, which I wisely said no to. But it's effortless. It doesn't require, it simplifies your life. You know, going to the grocery store, it takes 10 minutes.
I was just going to say that.
10 minutes for both of us for the week.
You go in, you go to two places, eggs, cheese. For me, if I get cheese, sometimes I don't, sometimes I do. It's eggs and meat, and then you walk out. It's like and some butter. It's not hard. It's not hard, and it's not nearly as expensive as everyone says it is either.
Oh, you know what's expensive? Doctor's visits are expensive. Lab work is expensive. Psych meds are insanely expensive. You know, people, oh, that's diet. That's too hard. You know what's hard? Depression's hard.
Yeah.
Anxiety's hard.
Yeah.
Try not sleeping more than an hour or two a night for 6 or 8 weeks at a time and get back to me about what's hard.
Mm-hmm.
This is easy. This is so bloody simple.
Yep.
And, you know, now there's nuance for everybody because, as you know, we're all individuals, and our nutrition requirements are always specific to our individual needs. My wife, for instance, doesn't eat like I do. She only eats meat, but she eats a variety of meats. Mm-hmm. And we find in the Meat RX community that women tend to eat a wider variety of meat than men do. And we believe it's for hormonal reasons.
Yeah.
But I found out what I genuinely crave and can afford in December of 2018. When I started out, I always had bacon because in studying and zeroing in on health, the reason why people failed was I'm bored of just eating meat.
I've never gotten bored. I have never gotten bored. I think that's what they think is going to happen. So they kind of projecting that, because I honestly, again, we can only speak from our experience. It's been almost 3 years for me, and I 2-3 times a day have some meat. It's fine. Throw some salt, maybe some cheese, bacon, eggs. Like, I honestly, not just it's meat. How can you get tired of eating meat? But you can still cook things so many different ways, right? There's like 6 different ways you can make eggs. There's a ton of different ways you can make meat. Like, and who gets bored of salt? You put salt on everything, you're fine.
Well, I took it inadvertently because I was always eating bacon with I made up my mind I was always going to have 2 types of meat, and one of those would always be bacon. Not because it was my favorite, but because as I thought about it, I could never think of a time when I had bacon on my plate, even if I didn't like the main course, that I didn't enjoy the meal.
Yeah.
So I made sure there would always be 2 types of meat, and one of those would always be bacon. So I've had bacon with fish and shrimp and pork shoulder roast and steak, eggs, the whole 9 yards. But then in December, I discovered lean ground beef, like 90-10, 93-7 ground beef.
Yep.
And we go into this big box store and huge meat section, and there's all these beautiful tomahawk, ribeyes, and all this gorgeous meat. But I'm seeing these tubes, these blood red tubes of lean ground beef, and I'm like, I need to try that. Mm-hmm. And I found that it's the most satisfying food I can put in my mouth.
Sure. And you just use salt?
I cook with beef tallow, salt, and bacon grease. That's it.
Beef tallow is good. Beef tallow is good.
Oh, beef tallow is awesome.
So here's a question. So if you're going to, what is the difference between maybe doing an 80-20 ground beef and not using beef tallow versus doing a 90-10 and then using beef tallow?
Beef tallow takes on the flavor of the meat that you're cooking in it. When I eat 80-20 ground beef, there's a flavor difference that I don't care for at all.
Interesting. Okay.
Whereas every bite of 90-10 or higher is just insanely satisfying.
Okay, so you feel like the flavor is a little bit different. Okay.
I feel like I'm getting exactly what I need to get.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
And since December of 2018, that's all I've had is lean ground beef and bacon every meal, every day.
Wow. So not even eggs.
Eggs, I gave up eggs after the second week. They stopped being satisfying.
Interesting. Okay.
And I don't feel like I'm restricting myself. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. Every bite of every meal every day is insanely delicious.
I know what you're talking about.
I haven't, 856 days, I've experienced no downside from eating this way, not even for a minute.
Awesome. Awesome. So let's just recap real quick. You had some mental illnesses, I guess is the right word, that you were dealing with in the past now, how does this work? Is this similar to, you know what, I was going to summarize and kind of end, but I just had a thought that I kind of want to dig into a little bit.
Well, because I am going to need to quit here in a second.
Okay, but real quick, if we can talk about this, maybe this is a follow-up for another talk, but the difference between being symptom-free and being cured.
I don't know that there is a difference. If I'm not experiencing the symptoms, what difference does it make?
Okay.
If I'm not actively, but see, here's the thing. If I know that if I start a spoonful of sugar, I'll be in the psych ward before the sun goes down.
Mm-hmm.
It's that fast. And there's a story behind, I haven't consumed sugar knowingly, but once I accidentally, unknowingly consumed a tiny, tiny infinitesimal amount. And between the cash register and the car when I consumed it, because it was in a mint that was supposed to be 0 carb, sugar-free, and this was at the beginning when I didn't know what I know now. But between the cash register and the car, and this mint was half the size of a dime, my behavior deteriorated. Before we got out of the parking lot, my wife's saying, "You're not being very nice to me anymore right now, and you sound just like you used to." So, and that was from one accident, and if I'd have known that xylitol is a flavoring created with sugar and alcohol, I would never have put it in my mouth, but there was nothing on the tin to suggest that was what was in it.
So it's not about being cured. And this is also a discussion topic that happens a lot, right? Well, you're never cured. You can just do something to keep the symptoms. Okay, great. Like you said, I really like what you said. If you have no symptoms, does it matter? And kind of leading to the point of, I think there could be some discussion on why did you have those symptoms in the first place? What was it that caused these things in your life? And if you're
inflammation on the brain, inflammation on the brain's what caused it from the toxic nonsense.
Right. So if you're removing the things that are causing the problem, was the problem, or was it what was causing the problem? Right. It's not the mental illness itself was a symptom.
There you go.
It wasn't the problem. You weren't hard to deal with and a jerk. I guess I'm going to call you a jerk, right? You weren't a jerk because you were sick. You were a jerk because that was a symptom of what was going on because of what you were putting in your body.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right in a nutshell.
Manifestation of the symptom, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I think that's definitely a topic we can talk about another time, because
I get that
a lot with people from all sorts of. Oh, I have Crohn's and I ate this way, so I'm cured. Well, you're not. Are you really? You're still taking medication and you're still doing this and you're still doing that. Are you really cured?
That's right.
You're symptom free, but you're doing all this stuff.
I would love to have further discussions with you, because I think we're on the same page in many ways, and our unique individual experiences, I bet, mesh very nicely.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for sharing your story. If you have anything real quick you want to talk about, where people can find you, what you do, because you do coaching, you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook, where can people find you and stuff? And don't forget to send me all that so I can post it.
I will do so. Instagram, you can find me at thankful.carnivore. I answer all DMs. If you have questions about the carnivore way of eating, don't hesitate to ask. And I get asked quite a few questions every day, which I'm happy for, because people, people need to know you just don't have to suffer. You can find me at meetrx.com, and the coaches, I'm listed there. You can get a 30-minute carnivore coaching session for under $20 from us. And I am committed to seeing people succeed. That's the two best ways to reach me. Instagram at thankful.carnivore and meetrx.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Appreciate the time, and we'll catch up with you soon, all right?
Thanks so much, Bronson. I appreciate what you're doing. Peace be with you. And let's thank you for this chance to put some good out into the world with you.
You bet. Thanks.